and welcome. Hi, I'm Walter. I'm the Dutch mentor, and this is our S.M.A.R.T podcast. S stands for self-care, M stands for mindful growth, A for adaptive learning, R for rhythmic operations, T for establishing a thriving community, and of course, P for performance. I'm really happy to have Robert White with me today, and we're going to have a quick 15-minute conversation with, I promise, some key takeaways. When he says, I love talking about chaos, it always reminds me of the simple equation that I try to live by is E plus R equals O. R starts for responding rather than reacting. And the problem is that most of us still react from the lower brain, causing unnecessary chaos and not the outcomes that we have. So that's what we're going to be talking about. And I'd love to hear your perspective. Robert, first, tell us a little bit about yourself, and we'll dive into a couple of the questions.
Look, I'm best known for a history in the human potential movement and specifically experientially based learning, learning from experience as opposed to didactically. So that's what I've done. There are 1,300,000 graduates of our leadership programs around the world, primarily in Asia, where my major companies were based. And I kind of retired at 46. I moved to Aspen, Colorado, built the big house, bought a jet, did all the nouveau riche things that the poor kid does when he starts making significant money. And in the process of doing that, lost control of my own company and lost a ton of money and an unfortunate, not desired divorce. So I started over at about 50 years old, and I work with leaders and their teams on issues of performance, but also of energy, of morale, of having a workplace be a better place to work. So those are some things about me. I do have a best-selling book, and some other good things have happened. So
we'll certainly talk about that on the back end. And thank you for sharing your story, and of course being vulnerable. Not telling everybody about the beautiful jet and the big house, but it's more important to talk about what didn't go well, because that's from which we can learn and, of course, re-energize ourselves. So you and I both know that lots of leaders are leading in chaos and have a really hard time sorting things out. So why is that? Where does chaos come from? And then we'll talk about some of the solutions or the pathways that people can undertake on a day-to-day basis to try to find their way back to normal and eventually back to performance.
Our time limitations mean we can't do a 3-day seminar on this subject, which it kind of deserves. But a first big question is: are we externally driven or internally driven? And the chaos comes from the outside generally. I think most of the people that are listening to podcasts about business, about being more effective, are people that have handled life to the extent that it's not the internal chaos is not the source. That you begin to notice what's happening in your family, as an example, stresses and fractures and anger and stuff like that. You notice things that are certainly happening in your company. You might be losing key people, or maybe key people are not performing the way they have in the past. Things just get confusing, and you kind of notice that. It does have an impact for many people internally because they care. The kind of people I work with are driven and purposeful and visionary and hardworking. And yet we are not immune to what's happening around us. So developing a strategy for handling chaos internally is a good beginning. And for me, you use the S.M.A.R.T acronym. My largest company in my history was ARC International, an acronym for Awareness, Responsibility, and Communication, which are the key aspects of all of our trainings, actually. So it had meaning beyond the word ARC. And so the thing I'd like to emphasize in the time we have together, Walter, is that awareness really is the beginning. My former wife had an expression that I like, which is she called awareness a higher state of noticing. Beginning to slow down a little bit. I think many of us, particularly in business, and even with our families, are going a little too fast to notice. The life becomes kind of a blur where today is like yesterday and tomorrow is going to kind of be the same. Uh, the, of course, popular expression is to stop and smell the roses. And that's actually good advice, that we slow down, notice the people in our lives, notice the environment, notice the weather, even the weather, in all of these things that we kind of take for granted. I built this big house in Aspen, and then after my divorce, bought a smaller one. That sounds familiar, I'm sure, to many people. And it was actually Cher's home in Aspen, the singer, actress, crazy woman. I bought her home and expanded it a bit. But it was on a road called McLean Flats Road, which is about 10 minutes out of Aspen. And one of the habits that I developed with a little advice from a coach was to, when I got in my car and drove down that driveway, to wake up, to really notice the beauty around me. I realized I'm living in one of the most beautiful places on the planet, and I was taking it for granted. And I think that as we deal with the chaos and craziness in our life, we need to tune up our awareness of what's around us. First of all, of our own emotional state, which is, in neurolinguistic programming, they have a lot of kind of catchphrases that I found useful. And one of them is your resource state. Where are you? Are you a little nervous? Are you a little excited? Are you a little afraid? What's really going on for you? And so to notice that, to notice the people around you, to notice the environment, to notice patterns, particularly looking for patterns. That in that noticing, and my kind of, I've lived abroad 23 years of my working life, and most of that in the East. So I'm kind of tuned to that kind of way of being, and to meditation or prayer, or taking that walk in the woods, or going for a swim, or whatever it takes to quiet your mind. And when you do that, you start noticing things that are not in your conscious mind. And a lot of what's going on for us is, in fact, subconscious. And by noticing it, first of all, you can disappear something just by noticing it, if it's not, doesn't feel good. But the second part is you start to notice things that you hadn't been consciously thinking of. It might be that one person that requires more attention in your company or in your family. It might be an idea that's been brought to you and that you rejected quickly because it didn't fit some kind of pattern that you were in, some kind of belief that you had. So it's my coaching is first awareness. Really stop. Develop a practice, and whether it's meditation or prayer or that walk in the woods, which it is for me, or the walk along, I get tremendous calmness out of walking along a flowing river. I don't know why. I didn't grow up next to a flowing river, but it has a tremendous impact on me that's noticeable. And some of my best ideas, for a long time, people say my best ideas come in the shower. I've heard that a lot. That doesn't happen for me. But I think we all can find a way to quiet the mind. The other two parts of that ARC thing are pretty simple, but not easy. The R is responsibility. Own it all. Don't be a victim.
It is. It's funny you say that, the behavior that where people come up short, and what you say is 100% true. I do the same thing with my clients. And the S for self-care starts by self-awareness, starts by priming, start by really understanding your true deep purpose and passion, and to making sure that you start building habits that are sustainable. It happens to be all of them are behavior based, and that's where the biggest struggle is with people. I would even say before they can get there, they first have to admit, almost like an alcoholic, by saying, listen, my life is becoming manageable. Right? There's chaos on the outside, maybe even some chaos on the inside. It's that breakthrough moment that allows them then to say, I'm going to do something about it. And then actually, I posted on that today, is that people still want to help themselves. They're still afraid to reach out and say, listen, I can't do this alone. And my philosophy is that you shouldn't do it alone. So how do you get people to actually see it and then taking an action to say, listen, it's time for me to do something about it before I lose it all?
Well, of course, I have the bias of having done group work for many, many years with all of those graduates. You know, we brought people together in our so-called basic seminar for 4 days, and then the advanced seminar is 5, and then the third level, which is really putting leadership into practice, goes over 100 days, 3 weekends, and some meetings in between, and so on. But what I've received from that is that doing things one-on-one can have value. I have 2 one-on-one coaches personally. I'm guessing you do also, Walter. That you've got some people that
2
you.
people?
Yep. Okay. And I had 3, and I've gotten it down to 2. I think that's a win. I didn't need the third one after a while, but the the thing in one-on-one is that we are masters as individuals. We are masters at justifying, at creating excuses, particularly for ourselves, and being subtle victims. I mean, I wrote a book on personal responsibility, and I'm noticing myself, I'm an absolute genius at being a victim subtly. You know, it's embarrassing. And then, you know, the kind of people I surround myself with, the kind of people you have on as guests, I notice, it's pretty hard for you to be subtle and hard for me. They bust us all the time. You know, they confront that stuff. Uh, so in groups, there is something about that when someone else is sharing, someone else is dealing with an issue, somehow our defensiveness and our ego drops away and we're able to see something more clearly. So that's one of the things I recommend. You know, I do team training because it's more effective than one-on-one training personally for me, and it's where my experience lies. But apart from that, apart from what how I make a living and how I contribute in the world, I've noticed that groups can be very powerful. They can also be purposeless, badly led, uh, not effective. I mean, all of that's true. If that's one of your excuses, I accept it totally. And now, what are we going to do? Um, but I think the way to, you know, you mentioned this thing about behaviors. And one of the learnings for me, I guess I knew it a long time ago, but it's really become present for me, is that, you know, you can make change from the inside out. Obviously, that's all the mindset work is about that. And and so you have a transformational event, and you know the example that I mean we create them in our training rooms, but uh, you know having a baby, your first, especially your first child, you know that baby gets put in your arms and everything changes. You don't need habit work or another book. You know that something really profound has happened, that this little being is now part of your life in a way that you maybe never imagined. And so you start shifting your behaviors. But the other part, and I find with executives it still works, is to change a behavior and have that become inward over time. Because particularly when you start seeing results from it. Uh, a long time ago, I got confronted by a secretary. She happened to be female in those days. You know, you had a receptionist at your office, and she also fit the stereotype. She was blonde, blue-eyed, and really pretty. And she confronted me because uh, I actually officed slightly off-site, a different floor of the building. So when I go down to meetings, I would pass by her. And she stopped me one day and said, "Mr. White, I was wondering, is something wrong?" And I was, you know, my family, the joke in my family, I was born in a 3-piece suit. You know, I'm kind of serious guy, and I'm an introvert, right? And what she taught me was that I was passing her almost every day, every work day,
Without
without
seeing her.
acknowledging her, without a smile, and that her assumption was something was wrong. And she quietly let me know that everybody on that floor, and there were a lot of people, were taking the cue from me that something's wrong. I wonder what isn't pleasing Robert. So you can have that kind of behavioral thing happen that leads to an insight. And then when you start forcing yourself to smile, a forced smile is terrible, but it's better than no smile. And it's practice. And then you start people warming up. You see people warming up to you, you know,
It's amazing. A simple exercise that I say, if I want to leave a message to all my team members at the hospital, I write it on the floor, and people say, "What?" Yeah, just go stand by the front door. Everybody walks in with their head down. Might as well write it on the floor. Why don't we all start with a simple exercise and pick up our chins, make eye contact, and say good morning? Just that those words of warmth and inviting, and like you say, the people around you were hesitant. Well, that creates or that kills creativity, right? In the long run, you are the victim of that, of your own behavior. And thank God the receptionist was brave enough to step up and say, "Hey, listen, wake up, buddy." And because it is too often people are not saying they don't have the behavior or the behavioral capacity to speak up. So, listen, I think you and I could talk about this literally for hours because it's certainly a very shared passion. But I believe that the human brain can only handle about 20 minutes worth of information. Exactly right, bite size at a time. In our wrap up, tell me what you think people should do, other than first looking in the mirror and admitting that they should do a little bit of self awareness, insight, discovery. What is it? What is an action step and a takeaway? And then tell us about where we can find your book that is a bestseller. So I'm sure there's some good golden nuggets in there as well.
Well, there's a lot there. I'll repeat what I have shared and hopefully more clearly, and that is to wake up. The biggest change starts when you begin developing that higher state of noticing. And whether it's through prayer or meditation or that walk in the woods or a swim or whatever it works for you. I kind of retired for 13 years in Aspen, and I skied 80 days a year. And that was big for me. So it could be a sport, it could be a hobby, it could be playing with your kids from a kind of enlightened place. So
Yeah,
wake up.
rock solid advice.
We are dealing with really successful people, Walter, and it's I've discovered that's kind of not on the top 10 list for them often. But really start noticing people and places and things and your own internal state. So that's more than anything. Look, my book is available on Amazon and all that stuff. It's called Living an Extraordinary Life. It has become a bestseller in several languages, and that people have found it valuable. So if you want a signed copy, email me, robert@extraordinarypeople.com, and I'll tell you how to do that. So robert@extraordinarypeople.com. And finally, I have a little gift for listeners in our kinds of audiences, Walter, and that is I do a weekly email called an Extraordinary Minute. It's an idea that I've picked up from a movie, from a song, from a poem that I read, from a book that I've read, and then my comments on it, all designed to be read in 1 minute or less. So it's a one minute exercise per week. I've been doing it for 16 years, and every week, every Wednesday morning, U.S. time. And you also receive a 30-page PDF that is shareable. It's basically an overview of what I've learned about outer success and how to kind of construct an inner person deserving of outer success. And a lot of people have found it valuable for, the brown bag lunch or a meeting or passing along to their family members, their friends, colleagues. So anyway, that's all free and a way for us to be in relationship. If you hit reply to any of my weekly emails, I read every one of them and I answer most of them. So
Okay,
a way to
sounds
be in relationship.
Thank you for being very gracious. Thank you for your time and your valuable insight, especially telling us about going from riches to rebuilding. And I think people need to know and understand that is an important message. But nothing more important than wake up, smell the roses,
and make a friend of chaos.
Yes, it is. It's really amazing. Thank you very much for joining me again, and we'll hopefully talk again someday in the future.
All the best, Walter.
Thank you.